Hello world. So before I start, can I just say, if you're religious and easily offended, you should turn this video off straight away, because I'm going to be talking negatively about religion. I'm going to be telling the truth. So, you know that saying, love the sinner, hate the sin. Well, I think, and I genuinely think, that that Bishop Eamon Martin is obligated to love the sinner and love the sin. Love the rapist and love the rape. Love the murderer and love the murder. And it could continue. Okay? And why I say that is because the story, RTE, first of all, issued an apology today for the video that he showed last week, alleging that God was a rapist. And they got it wrong, because God has a thing about sending angels in the night to do his dirty work. So it wasn't exactly him that did it, but I understand the sentiment you were trying to get across. So listen, why I say that he loves and he's obligated to love the sinner and the sin and so on is because when you take faith and religion from the stories in the Bible, they're just stories. That's all they are. They're just stories. And they were written by old men predominantly. I mean, you see in the Middle East now, men they're the bosses, and they make all the laws, and So it was usually old men, and it was in the Middle East, and they were superstitious, they were uneducated, they were stupid compared to us. They had no scientific knowledge whatsoever. So if there was a huge earthquake, they might equate it to God's under the ground, that kind of thing. You know what I'm trying to say. So, take all the faith, take all the religion from the stories, and what you have is just stories. And you'll find in the Bible, if you go through it, a lot of them are horror stories. And they cover the worst things humans can do to each other. And here's the thing where I say that Eamon Martin not only does believe them, but has to believe them, is because they're in the Bible. And you can't pick and choose, but people do. He will. And I'm saying facetiously that he believes it. I know he doesn't, because he's a hypocrite. I'm not going to start abusing him, but I'm just telling the truth. He's a hypocrite. Because if you pin him down on some of the horrible things that are in the Bible, he'll make excuses like, it was in the past, or it was the Old Testament and that kind of thing. And the New Testament is God wasn't as angry kind of thing, and he got everything. The New Testament is just as crazy. It's just not as violent. It's just not as violent as the Old Testament. And so the story of Mary becoming pregnant is, at its core, God sent an angel to go into a woman's room, penetrate her while she's asleep, doesn't matter whether she's awake, penetrates her without her permission, impregnates her, and forces her to have a kid, changes her life. Listen, raping a woman can change her life, but being forced to have a kid from a rape can change someone's life forever. And that is the core of the story. And that's without religion, and that's without faith. And that's what it is. So that's why he has to believe it. And this week, instead of him being angry and outraged, because listen, if you criticize any god, Christianity, Muslims, the Jews, although the Muslims, listen, we've seen it. You criticize the Muslims, you go out in the street with a picture of Muhammad, and you will be killed. Eventually, if you stand there long enough, you will be killed. And I don't care what you say. We only saw it in France a few weeks ago with the school teacher who was teaching a class, and someone found out that he had a picture of Muhammad. I mean, no one knows what it looks like. And they got offended for like God. And he went and killed the man. Right? That's religion for you. And I say that in particular, and this goes with Christianity as well. I mean, Christianity got all that butchery and slaughter back in the day with the Crusades, that kind of thing. So the Islamists are just catching up, you could say. Anyhow, it's not about Islam. So I think he should be ashamed, because the emperor has no clothes. And when they put that video on last week, that's what I said. The emperor has no clothes. I'm repeating myself, but you take the religion, take the faith out, and that's what you're left with. A story of a woman being raped. And he has to believe that. And religious people always use religion as a barrier. it's kind of like when you look through the prism of religion, you go, that's why it was God's word. Didn't know that, but once God wanted it done, then it's okay. And listen, let me just tell you really quickly. We all know the story of Moses, okay? Well, Moses, let my people go. Well, Moses, let's just say he lived in Cairo. It was in Egypt, so I don't know, it was probably wasn't called Cairo back then, but let's say it was in Cairo. That's where the Pharaoh was. And instead of God sending down an angel of love to whisper to Pharaoh when he was asleep, the way he sent down a rapist angel to rape a woman in bed, if he doesn't send down an angel of love and saying into Pharaoh's ear when he was asleep, let my people go. You'll wake up tomorrow morning, you'll have a heart full of love, you'll find me, because God tells you he can't force himself on you, you have to come and find him, But he didn't do that. And God's first protocol to get the Jews free, when he could have just done something simple and sent an angel of love to whisper in Pharaoh's ear and say, just let me people go. Soften your heart. He didn't do that. He sent 10 plagues to the whole of Egypt. So not even to Pharaoh's house, because he was a god. I mean, he was a god in Egypt. So not just to Pharaoh's house who was in charge, or not just to the people of Cairo that gave Pharaoh succor and worshipped him, that kind of thing. Listen, he probably didn't even believe it, maybe, I don't know, obviously, but you know the point I'm trying to make. Not even just to them. Say, well, look, you're part of it, so you're going to get punished. To the whole of Egypt. And when I'm talking, I used to talk to religious lunatics, the Mormons and the Jehovah's Witnesses used to come to my door all the time, and they stopped coming to the estate, because I'd keep them at my door for as long as I could and just talk about the Bible, and I'd quote stuff to them, and it would be all the most horrible stuff in the Bible, all the worst things humans can do to each other: slavery, child slavery, the butchery of women, butchery of children, and they would excuse it. They wouldn't excuse it, and they wouldn't condone it, let's say. They would tacitly excuse it by saying, like I said about what the bishop would say, that was the Old Testament, that was when God was angry, and it was our fault. It was humans' fault, okay? Because we were born sick. Christopher Hitchens tells you, read his book, God is Not Great. Read Christopher Hitchens, God is Not Great. You get it for free on YouTube. It's for 8 hours long, you can listen to it. Read it, it will change your life. It will change your death. It will change your death, alright? You won't be afraid to die, because listen, when you die, heaven, see, this is when you take religion out of it, right? Heaven, when you die, okay? You die, you lose your family, your friends, all your loves, all your passions, all the things you hated, because that keeps you going, alright? The love you had for the woman that you love, or the women that you love, or the men that you love, whatever it is, all that is stripped away. All your hobbies, all your skills, all your talent. You could be a great wood carver or a great musician, whatever. That's all stripped away when you go to heaven. That's gone. You take that away and you strip you and you put it in the bin. And your job when you go to heaven, okay, Christians, is to kneel at the chair at the right hand side of God and praise him for all eternity. That's heaven. And you're going to be happy. And you're going to be happy because God is going to make you happy. God's going to make you happy. So it's not the love of a woman is going to make you happy. It's not lying in bed in the dark with a woman that you've chose, or a man that you've chose for the rest of your life, and just listening to her breathing in the dark. And even when you have your greatest doubts in your life, do you know what? This person beside me in bed loves me for what I am. And that's a passion. That's something to earn. But God makes you happy. Okay, he forces you to be happy. So anyhow, Moses, he sends 10 plagues to the whole of Egypt. And he would say to these Mormons and that kind of thing, he used to say to them, and in town, I used to see them with the virus and all, they're not there anymore, obviously. But he stand around giving out the watchtower. And I'd talk to them about this kind of thing. And I'd say to them, what about the village that was 1,000 miles away from Cairo, that didn't know Moses, never heard of Moses, Christians, Jews, hadn't got a clue. All you knew was their village. And once they had a water supply, they could keep going, because you could get crops, that kind of thing. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, these 10 plagues hit them. And the only word that they have of anything outside their village is maybe the travelling salesman that comes along every 6 months with pots and pans, that kind of thing, and he tells them about Pharaoh. There's a fella in Cairo called Pharaoh. He's a god. The reason the sun rises is because of Pharaoh. The reason it sets is because of Pharaoh. And they say, he's not here. I don't care. That's what I'd be saying anyway. Well, well and good. Keep it up. and keep the water coming. And so they wake up in the morning, and maybe the one, well that you have is turned to blood. The sun disappears. They get covered in boils, get covered in lice. What else happens to them? Blue bottles. There's flies everywhere. So imagine a couple of flies in your house. These were on everything, on you, on your food, on the walls, on the floor, everywhere. Okay? So after all these 10 plagues, and I'll tell you this, if someone put me in a room and put 10 tortures, they were actually plagues, they were tortures. If you tortured me with 10 different tortures, and he said, you're going to believe this, and you're going to say this, and you're going to think this, I can say I'm not. And he can torture me with those 10 different tortures, and he can say I'm not. And he said, well, I'm going to kill you. I say, that's my life. And I'm not going to do what you tell me. And you're going to have to kill me. So why I say that is because the second protocol, when all the plagues and all didn't work, was to kill all the firstborn of Egypt. Beautiful. Beautiful. And of course, he didn't do it himself again. What did he do? He sent an angel of death. So he's an angel of rape, and he's an angel of death. Happy days, God. Happy days. What a legend. Yeah? So, he sent an angel of death, and it went through the streets of Egypt. That's what you say. It went through the streets of Egypt. The whole of Egypt. And it killed all the firstborn. Now, look, the firstborn could be 20 years old, your firstborn child. It could be 2 minutes old. And I've thought about this a lot. A lot. And I imagine back then, the infant mortality rate was huge, I'd say. Huge. I'm just guessing now. I'd imagine it's huge. And I'd say maybe a woman might have 2 or 3 kids, stillborn, miscarriages, whatever. Die a few days, a few hours after being born. She will die. I'd say there was a huge rate of women dying in childbirth as well. So just imagine you've gone through all these plagues. You don't know why. You have no clue. You don't know what's happening. And you have a baby. A couple of days old, couple of months old, doesn't matter. You have a baby, and it's the first one that lives. It's your firstborn. And you hold her in your arms at night, every night, to keep her warm, to keep her safe. And nothing's going to happen to her. And you wake up in the morning, and you wake up with a corpse in your arms. You wake up with a corpse in your arms. The only thing you held dear in your life, maybe. After all you've been through, and you've watched her, don't forget you've watched her or him being covered in boils, and being covered in lice, and being covered in flies, and not being able to do anything about it. And then she's butchered, she's killed, and you don't know why. Well, Pharaoh apparently knows why, and Moses definitely knows why. Moses knows why, alright, because he got God to do his dirty work for him. So, if I was in a room getting tortured with 10 different tortures, and I said, look, you're going to have to kill me. You have to kill me. I'm not going to believe what you want me to believe. I'm not going to say what you want me to say. I'm just not going to do it. And you brought in my kid, and he said, if you don't say what we tell you to say, and if you don't believe what we tell you to believe, we're going to cut his throat. I'd say, where do I sign? I'd say, where do I sign? What do you want me to think? What do you want me to say? Because my life is one thing, but that's my child's life. That's my firstborn. After all the misery me and my wife had, all the children that have died on us, it's our firstborn. Can't lose him. If he was my 10th born, I can't lose him, but I can't lose my firstborn. Not after all this. But that's what God did. And Pharaoh let Moses go, as you would. And the thing about Moses is, Moses went to search for the promised land. And he met a couple of tribes, like there was thousands of years ago here in Ireland. There was tribes, and we would war for, property and land and that kind of thing and whatever. And there was loads of tribes out there as well at the time in the Middle East, as there still are today. And there was 2 in particular, the Amalekites that come to mind, and the Midianites. And 2 things happened. The same thing happened to both of them. But the Amalekites, Moses said to, it was a Saul or Paul, I read this years ago. He was a Saul or Paul, and he said, look, take an army and go and not fight the Amalekites, not fight them in a war and subdue them and that kind of thing, and say, listen, that's it, take over them and whatever. He told them to go and commit genocide against the Amalekites. And he was very precise. He said, I want you to go and kill all the men, all the women with child. That's really important, that's significant. Women with child. And all the males. So that meant little boys, 2, 3, 4, little newborn babies, brand new. Minutes old, hours old, days old, weeks old, months old, years old. Wiped them all out. Moses was such a psychopath. And he had such support from God. I mean, look what God done for him. They're torturing the whole population of Egypt and then slaughtered all the firstborn. He told them to kill all the cattle and all the goats and their sheep. And he wanted them wiped off the face of God's earth. There was to be no trace left of the Amalekites. So they went, they done the job, they ran through the village like wildfire. And they hadn't got guns, of course, back then, or drones or bombs. They had knives and swords and clubs. So you picture that for a second. Alright, you picture that. Being a small child and seeing huge men with swords and hatchets and daggers and clubs coming in and just killing everyone. Killing everybody, anything that moved. Except the little girls. Saul decided when he saw all the animals, he saw all the animals and he said, I think the word that he used was they were too fat. And it would be a disgrace and a waste to kill them. So he took them and he brought them back to Moses. But he also brought back the preteen girls. And he kept them as slaves. And Moses was glad. And I say preteen girls in particular, want to be clear about it. Because I'd imagine back then, you know, there was no age of consent. You weren't saying, listen, how old are you? 17. That's all right, when you come out for a drink. I'd imagine if you were old enough to have a kid, you were having kids. And that was it, you were married off. Again, the way it is in the Middle East now. The way it is in parts of England. Where, you know, you don't get a choice. That's your husband. That's it. There you go. Take it or leave it. And there's no divorce. So, all those girls had to be really, really young because they were without child. They were virgins. And Moses, Saul or Paul or whoever it was, took them back. And Moses was glad, like I said. Now, when you say this to the religious nuts, not like your grace, because he would find an excuse how to not support that without offending God, without the cock crowing 3 times. Do you remember when Peter that was supposed to deny Jesus 3 times after the Garden of Gethsemane? And I do say to him about all this, and he go, well, it wasn't really slavery. And he say, well, it was slavery. Oh, well, then it was this, that, and well, they weren't really. Well, maybe they were looked after, and it was Moses, so they looked after the girls. Well, come here, I tell you. They might, and I stress they might, have only been doing the cleaning and cooking for these men, because it was men that were in charge. But somehow I doubt it, don't you? And I don't care what time you're living in. I know things are different from time to time, obviously, but if you have sex with a 10-year-old girl, it's rape. And if she's 12, it's rape. And if it's 5, it's rape. And so I mean, look, it doesn't say in the Bible, and lo, and verily did Moses rape those children. It doesn't say that. But look, there were slaves. There were scared little girls that just saw their family being butchered. Maybe their baby brother being put on the ground and someone clubbed his head in. That's what they've just seen. And now they're slaves. And now they're going to be looked after and treated fairly and treated nicely. Right? So I say all that is because I want to make it clear that when the good bishop is offended by offensive things about his religion, well, I've given you a few things to be offended about, Bishop. I've given you a good few. And getting on your knees and begging for forgiveness doesn't cut it. It doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. And in your heart, you know it doesn't work. And every year when you get on the altar and you celebrate the Passover, that's what you're celebrating. You're celebrating mass murder of little babies. That's what you're celebrating every single year. So, you know what you can do with your offence and with your outrage? Because your voice is a squeak compared to people like me that think freely, that have thrown off the shackles of religion. And we're not afraid to die. We're not afraid to die. Because I know, that your God isn't there waiting for me to judge me with a ledger and say, listen, so you're going to hell for all eternity. You're going to hell and burn in hell for all eternity because you didn't believe in me. So like I said, Bishop, maybe you should get knee bound and take your religion out of all your voodoo mumbo jumbo and see them the stories of what they are, and the stories of murder and butchery and genocide and child slavery and child rape, and you support that. For shame. Boy, world.